Hello, I'm Kate Freeman, and this is the Daily Dollop. On this episode of the Daily Dollop, we're going to discuss the body mass index and why it's not useful as a measure of your health. We're going to talk about finding a better relationship with your weight and making peace with your body, and talking about establishing healthy eating habits despite what you weigh. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. My name is Kate Freeman. I'm a registered nutritionist and the founder of the Healthy Eating Hub. And I'd just like to share a really embarrassing story, just so you know that I'm a real person and not some elusive weirdo on your podcast. Actually, you're going to think I'm weird after this story. But when I was fresh to a new corporate health job, I was meeting my supervisor, second day on the job, and I was wearing this lovely pencil skirt, and in a very flustered, hectic morning, I had managed to rip the inner lining of the skirt and it got caught in my G-string. And so while my supervisor went off to the toilet, I decided to hike my skirt right up to my waist, just expose everything, pull my G-string precisely out of my butt crack, fix my lining and pull my skirt back down, only to find that when my supervisor came back into the room, he walks over to the window and he starts lowering the blinds, and through the window is this man sitting at a table, and he's just staring at me, blinking, and he saw the whole thing. So there you go. That's why you should never wear a G-string on a Monday, because bad things happen when you do. So on to today's show, where we're talking about the body mass index and why it's not a good measure of our health. I'm sure most of you would be familiar with it. We call it the BMI for short, and it is essentially a measure of body fatness. And so what we do is we do it's a height and weight ratio, and essentially it's been used for many, many years, decades, in fact, to do population research. So it's a really old school measure of body fatness, and the reason that it's so prevalent among health professionals today is because it's the cheapest, easiest, and simplest measure to assess body fatness over a huge population. It is much, much easier to gather thousands of people's height and weight to calculate their BMI than it is to do other measures of body composition to measure fatness, like underwater weighing or bioelectrical impedance or skin folds. And so what that means is that nutrition research has, a lot of that's been based on the BMI, particularly research that's looking at high numbers of people, so thousands and thousands of participants. And so it's not completely redundant. It is an important measure because we do know from studies that look at whole populations that as the BMI increases, so too generally does body fat increase. And also so too does the risk of mortality, which is death, and morbidity, which is sickness. And I'll link to an article I wrote for Her Canberra a number of years ago on the BMI, so that you can just see an illustration of the graph on BMI and lifestyle-related diseases. I'll pop that in the show notes. So it's not redundant. It is an important part of nutrition research, but it is not an important measure of you as an individual. The truth is that at a fundamental level, it doesn't actually measure your body composition. So body composition is just a phrase that we use to describe what your body is made up of. You are made up of essentially 4 things: water, muscle, fat, and minerals. So we've got muscles and bones and water and then body fat. And we have varying levels of those 4 things. So when we get our body composition measured by maybe a DEXA scan or an in-body bioelectrical impedance scan, or we do underwater weighing or skin fold testing. It's measuring generally either your body fat percentage, your muscle mass, your water weight, things like that. And so those things are a much better predictor of fatness than the BMI. And I'll give you an example. If we had two men that both weighed 100 kilos, and they were around 80 centimeters tall. That's not very tall. 180 centimeters tall. They would have a BMI that would say that they're overweight. And that BMI would make predictions around their health based on what their BMI says about fatness. However, one man has 12% body fat. He weight trains regularly, has a pretty active lifestyle, he has a high muscle mass, and subsequently a lower risk of things like cardiovascular disease in particular. His waist to hip ratio is lower, indicating that he's got low fat stored around his middle. Then we take the other gentleman, also with a BMI of 30, but he has 30% body fat. He lives a sedentary lifestyle. He's got a much lower muscle mass. His waist to hip ratio is above 1, indicating fat storage around his abdomen. He is at an increased risk of health problems later on. And the BMI could not have predicted that. The thing is, though, is if you have found over the years that the BMI has given you this weight range that you're supposed to attain for, or even if you've done other body composition analysis that's given you this weight range that you have to strive for, but that feels demoralizing and unrealistic and you've tried so many times and felt like you've never been able to get there, then I would actually argue that any kind of weight measurement is actually going to be detrimental to your long-term progress. Because if any kind of weight loss method or weight loss journey that you embark on that comes from a place of dissatisfaction and this desire to shred your body or have this horrible fat get off our bodies, which marketing does so well, it's like treats fat like this evil substance that you have to get rid of off your body. That kind of pressure and desire to lose weight often results in really drastic restrictive dieting practices, fosters a poor relationship with food. We end up with disordered eating practices of high restriction leading to overeating, and people are utterly miserable. And so I would actually argue that rather than using any kind of weight measurement, whether it's the BMI or body composition or just weighing yourself daily, if that's resulting in a poor relationship with food and this horrible dieting cycle, then let's just ditch it. Let's get rid of daily weighing and instead start to focus on, 1, learning to accept your body the way that it is, and 2, bringing in healthy behaviors from a place of love and self-care. Much, much easier said than done, particularly if weight loss has always been motivated by dissatisfaction for many, many years. But it's a much more freeing place to actually do healthy things for yourself because you like yourself. And the research actually around this movement called Health at Every Size is really, really promising. I'm going to link to some in the show notes. But basically what the research says is that regardless of someone's BMI, body composition, or body size, that you can be healthy at a range of different body sizes. Because yeah, your BMI might be in the overweight or the obese range. Yes, your body fat percentage might be in the overweight range. But if you are eating 5 serves of veggies every day, you're doing some exercise that you love every day, you're eating mostly minimally processed foods, but then you're also enjoying yourself socially, but you know to stop when you're full, go to find food when you're hungry, and you're starting to eat that little bit more intuitively, then you actually find yourself becoming more consistent with these eating patterns and are healthier than the person whose BMI might show that they're a lower weight than you, but they're not doing any of those healthy behaviors. Health is much, much more than just the weight on the scales. It's much, much more than whatever your BMI is. It's much, much more than your body fat percentage. These are great tools to measure progress if you want to measure progress, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with you wanting to lose weight. But just make sure that your desire to lose weight is not causing you to do drastic, unhealthy things that are causing you stress and anxiety. Come from a place of going, I'm just going to focus more on consistently doing healthy behaviors every day. What I would suggest is starting to break your day down into smaller pieces and just focusing on one habit at a time. I'm really passionate about giving yourself the mental space and energy to just focus on one healthy behavior and make it a part of your life. Ensure that it's realistic and sustainable and that it's coming from this place of self-love and acceptance. So if you've been touched by diet culture over the years and you've cycled on and off diets, you might like to take my diet personality quiz. It will outline and give you a category of 5 possible categories, just things that I've learned over the years and help you get started on the right path to maybe breaking free from those diets. The link to that will be in the show notes. But as always, the Daily Dollop is about changing the conversation, finding a more realistic and healthy approach to eating. I hope you've learned something about the BMI today and feel like you can just let that bad boy go. Until next time, we'll see you later.